Hey, welcome everybody to the sleepy man cave, still in a state of upheaval. Um, yeah, it's quite a mess as I am trying to sort through comic book boxes that were once partially in order but somehow got shuffled around during some crisis or other domestic crisis where I had to quickly move a bunch of comic books out of the way. Um, but they were never in really well organized order, any of the recent stuff. So I'm doing a major haul through it. I think I've talked a little bit about that on some other videos. This week there weren't a whole lot of comic books. I got five new comic books from the shop, and I've still been sort of lagging behind in my comic book diary here, so I'll cover these, and I'll probably do some other videos to cover some of the older ones. From Dark Horse came Resurrectionists #3, which is about these group of people who've known each other and are working on some kind of mission throughout time as they keep getting their past memories revived. One is the architect, one is the something else, so they each play their role. And my problem with it's by Fred Van Lente, and I like it enough that I'm going to stick with it. It's unusual and different enough. The hero is an architect who went to jail and is now a thief, helping steal ancient Egyptian artifacts. Of course, it turns out he was also an ancient Egyptian architect in another life. So the full meaning of all these other lives and what everyone's after and what they're doing is still unclear after 3 issues. And I think there's just a certain amount of lack of clarity of who we're looking at, of what's going on, and I don't know whether to blame the script or the art. I probably should blame both, but the art definitely has its moments where it's less clear what's going on, and other times when it's more clear. So it's interesting. Outside of the Mignola books at Dark Horse, I frequently seem to have trouble with the art on books at Dark Horse. It feels to me like I don't know, like they have a lower standard or a style that doesn't click with me so well. But I'm gonna keep with Resurrectionists. I'm enjoying that. While we're on non-DC books, I picked up Ghosted for only one reason. One of my favorite artists is the guest artist this issue. I was kind of sad to see he's not continuing with it, because I definitely want to see Juan Jose Ripe steadily on a book, hopefully a very good book. He did 20 issues of Clone, and they were marvelous, and he was so incredible, and Clone was such an incredible book, and no one bought it, and now it's been canceled. I think that's still bothering me, and I guess they hung on with their low sales for as long as they could because they had a possible TV deal in the works, and when the TV deal fell through, they no longer felt they could subsidize the comic book Clone. Anyway, Juan Jose Ripe is kind of in the now I'm forgetting his name. The guy who did Shaolin Cowboy. He's in the Shaolin Cowboy artist's vein. Highly detailed, somewhat disturbing, and of course for Ghosted, very disturbing, as we get a major bloodbath. But even there's a creepiness to all of it, and I really enjoyed it. I don't know. It's kind of got me a little curious about Ghosted again. I read the first issue of Ghosted, but then did not continue with it. There was just something about it that didn't quite click with me on that first issue. But maybe I should go back and get some issues, or I don't know, I might pick up the next issue. I can't decide. My bigger concern is to figure out what the next Juan Jose Ripe book will be. If there's any complaint about Ripe, is that occasionally his figures are a little stiff. But whatever flaws he has, he makes up with, incredible diligence of detail. And no matter how busy a picture of his is, a panel of his, it still tells the story really well. He's a really strong storyteller despite his attention to detail and everything. This also seems to have very good coloring. Whoops, hit my microphone, pardon me. Seems to have very good coloring by a colorist that I've never heard of. One imagines he's from Eastern Europe with the name of Miroslav Mrva. Who did the cover? Dan Panosian. It's a very different kind of minimalistic cover compared to the interiors. Ghosted feels interesting, but not must-read interesting, judging by this issue. Okay, then as I do every week, I picked up Batman Eternal. I guess this issue was a bit of an upturn. We really took care of some plot points here. What has Red Robin and Bluebird been doing all this time? They've been just slowly tracking the kids with the nanosites inside of them, and now they finally found out that a whole lot more kids have, or people have it in them, and there's some factory that's building something and using them as robotic kind of slaves. And we find out who's behind it. This issue had kind of so-so art. It's been pointed out as a bit Michael Allred-like, and I guess that's true, and I might have liked it better if Laura Allred colored it. I found the colors really worked against the art. And made it often look kind of silly or awkward or something. So I really did not appreciate the colors. There's a pretty good spread, though. It was somewhat retro, but also had that stiffness. And there's Batgirl, who now very clearly looks like she does in her own book, and is constantly sneering like an annoyed teenager, and does not seem like the Batgirl who's obsessed by freeing her dad anymore. But, got to go with that. So I guess I appreciated that it kind of filled in some of the gaps. Maybe I'll make I still hope to have the time and energy to make a longer Batman video of what all my Batman reading right now, especially about Batman Eternal. Although I kind of dislike... basically at this point, to me, it's clearly a sort of failed project that might still be interesting to read, even though it's a failure, sort of, or an unsuccessful attempt at storytelling. This 52-issue story that they're trying to do. And it's getting harder and harder to cut them the slack, I suppose. So speaking of not having to cut slack on a weekly book, Future's End I still love. I do have to say I made the mistake of looking at just some little blurbs about Convergence that's coming up, and it made it clear to me that one of the plot elements in here is just setting up for the battle or whatever in Convergence, so that if I just read Future's End, which is my plan, I won't get the full story. I won't get the finale of that plot thread. And I won't spoil it for you. I might discuss Future's End, but that's even less likely, though. I'm less likely to have time, because I feel like less people are interested in Future's End or following Future's End. A lot of people seem to find it really boring. I find it to be kind of my ideal DC book, where I get to explore the DC universe and have lots of interesting characters, and the plot all fits together. It's much more about the small moments and the characters than the end of the world stuff, even though it is an end of the world kind of book. But it's just been a pleasure. This is like one of my top DC books. Another top DC book is Grayson, I got the Flash anniversary cover. Generally, I don't go for the variants, but the other Grayson cover had the usual swirls on it, and I feel like I'm finally tired of the spiral symbols on the cover. So Dick Grayson does not meet the Flash in this issue. Rather, he has a big fight with the Midnighter. And runs into this, at the end of the book, is in this cool outer space garden. And against my better judgment, I'm very interested in that. Because I was feeling like the Midnighter feels to me like an insertion by DC editorial, a distraction from the proper Grayson as undercover super spy. But now I'm really curious about the garden and the gardener and everything that appears in here. As always, the interior art is amazing. The story and characters are done really well. It feels... Well, I'm not an expert on what Dick Grayson should be like, but the Dick Grayson character feels very strong and very positive here, despite, what he's going through. And we get a little more about Spiral revealed. The other interesting thing is I think this is the first issue of Grayson that's not a done-in-one story. It's literally to be continued rather than just, some continuing story threads from previous issues. But the actual story with Grayson's current adventure to try to find this brain is not concluded in this issue. Probably that's wise of them at this point to do some multi-issue stories. I hope it's not like a 10-issue story or a 20-issue story. I hope they still stick to a lot of shorter stories in the bigger framework of Grayson's situation in Spiral. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. I'll mention 2 other DC books while I'm doing this one, and then I think I'll do a separate video discussing some indies that I read in the other recent weeks, because I have quite a number of those. So I think it was last week that Justice League 3000 came out, and this is another one of my favorite DC books. But I did not like the previous issue so much because it focused so much on the now revived Blue Beetle and Booster Gold. And they kind of just run around the future doing shtick with each other. And shtick is okay, but I felt in the other 11 issues of the Justice League 3000, the humor was more built into the situation and built into the characters' situation, with them being these weird gene-spliced clones or whatever they are of their past selves. And this issue had a little bit of the Blue Beetle and Booster Gold, but luckily a lot more about the Justice League, who are kind of setting up right now on this future Camelot, where that ties into the old Camelot 3000 book. So that's kind of cool. The way they've tied it in, and Etrigan is still around, the demon, Jack Kirby's demon, and that's very cool. And this character shows up, can't remember if her name is Ice or something else. Apparently she's an old character from the Justice League International, which I've never read. Often I know of characters even though I've never read about them, but in this case I don't know who she is. She seems like a kind of cool character. She's been sitting around bored and immortal for all these thousands of years, for this 1,000 years. So that makes her an interesting character to me. So I hope that overall Justice League doesn't get too distracted by its let's bring back our old Justice League International comic book that we used to do back in the 90s or 80s that people used to love. But I hear some people jumping back onto this because of their appearance, so I guess that's good. I wonder how long can something called Justice League 3000 last. I mean, I would love it if it lasted 50, 60 issues, but I'm kind of bracing myself for about 20 issues. But that's a good run for something just really kind of weird and out there. I love the science fiction vision of this one, and I love the humor built into the fact that the revived superheroes are not really the heroes they once were. They're kind of these odd versions of themselves. And there did seem to be, before the appearance of Booster Gold and Blue Beetle, there did seem to be progression in the characters of this pseudo Superman and pseudo Wonder Woman and pseudo Batman and this Flash, who is now a woman. That's actually done, some really interesting things are done with her in this issue. And I don't think we even see the Green Lantern here, but there's been some, in this issue, some really interesting stuff with the Green Lantern, who's this shrunk down version of the Green Lantern flying around in his magic Green Lantern cloak. He doesn't have a ring. Anyway, I really love this series, and I'm hoping the sudden revival of the Justice League International doesn't lessen my interest. So one more I'll talk about in this video was the Swamp Thing. I think this also came out last week. The past month has been a real blur, but this cover is quite odd. It is by Jesus Saez, but it doesn't really look like him. Maybe it's colored differently or something. And unfortunately, Saez is not doing the art on the inside, but Javi Pina is doing the art, and he does a great job. The colorist is now yet another colorist, June Chung, and she's pretty good, but I think this used to be the best colored comic book at DC, in my opinion. Or this and Wonder Woman, both by Matt Wilson. And it's still very well colored. It's kind of unfair of me to compare her to past. But anyway, the writing is really right on. There's 2 more issues to go, and then this book is canceled, and perhaps it's nice that Charles Soule gets to end it. If someone had to end it, I'm sure he's going to end it right. I feel like Alec Holland, during the Soule run, was building up a little community around him, and then as the Soule run is ending, they've been tearing away the community so that he's much more on his own, although he does have some allies back in the green, I guess. And I guess now we have Abby showing up. But it kind of leaves me wondering that when some other creator can start Swamp Thing with I'm suspecting pretty much a blank slate when Soule is done with it. And in a way that's good, but in another way, as a reader, I kind of want... I'm enjoying Swamp Thing so much now, I just want it to continue, and I don't want to lose what we have here. But... that's the way it goes. I'm trying to think, I play with the idea, I've pretty much dropped Marvel books. Not really dropped them, because I read them, eventually read some of them on Marvel Unlimited, and I get a few through my mail subscriptions, like I get Daredevil and Thor that way. But I'm thinking, I keep playing with the idea of what if I just drop all the DC books I'm getting and focus even more on the indies. And I guess I'm really torn by that. I want the DC, since coming on to the New 52, I want these DC books to be good, but a lot are going away. In my mind, Wonder Woman already went away. The Wonder Woman that I loved went away, and the Swamp Thing is going away. Future's End I really love, but that will be ending soon. There's been Batman and Robin would be really hard to drop, but that's up and down. So I don't know. I probably will I keep getting sucked back into the DC books. I'm not sure why. One-time Marvel fanboy, now a DC addict. It's kind of strange. Okay, I'll talk to you all later. Bye-bye.